everybody. Welcome back to our show, Decide to Dominate. I'm your co-host, Mike Weatherly, and this is the main man, DJ Dozier. Today we got a very special guest on. I'm going to kick it over to DJ because you guys were roommates and there's so much history here today. I'm going to let you do the intro. Go ahead.
Okay, so the first thing is, before we even get to the intro, I'm just letting you know, this guy right here, Greg Truitt, GT for short, is my first recruit for that first golf tournament.
Oh, get out of here.
Yeah,
okay, all right.
guy.
So look, the businesses are already intertwined and we just started. All right. Okay.
So
you were saving that for the show.
Well,
clearly.
Absolutely. And
first I've heard of this, obviously.
Regardless of what he's accomplished in his life, the one thing that strikes me the most, that he can hit a golf ball forever.
Oh, I see. Okay, so there's a recruitment for a reason. All right, I'm tracking now. I got it.
Yeah, so Greg's actually part of the team that helped me to learn golf back at Penn State. So,
okay, all right.
Yeah, we have that in common. So had to do that, Greg. So a lot of things we can talk about.
Right.
What I love about your story more than anything else is how you started at Penn State, right? I mean, so talk about how, really you weren't interested in, you were somewhat interested in going to Penn State, but there were a couple of other schools that you were looking at. But you did land at Penn State, and obviously there was a plan there. So can you talk about, what went through your mind as a young person as you were making a decision and how you ended up at Penn State?
Well, for me at that time, I didn't know my head from a hole in the wall, and there was no rhyme or reason. It was because Penn State asked me last, why am I not going there? And it was a childhood dream. My dad had played at Penn State, so I've always wanted to play at Penn State. That was a dream as a child. But when you're in high school and you have multiple options, I was going to Georgia. Herschel Walker played a big part of my life. I thought Vince Dooley, the Dogs, and I actually saw the Penn State game before DJ went as a freshman into Penn State. I saw Todd Blackledge and Kurt Warner play for the national championship and win in the Sugar Bowl. So there was no deep thought. There was no prayer. It was at that moment as a wing and a hope. And the last person to ask me got me because I didn't want to disappoint anybody. So Penn State was the last one to ask me to the dance, and I said, okay, I'll go. So not very deep.
Right. So talk about your position, though. It's one of those positions that's sort of the unsung kind of position. People, especially as fans, take it for granted, but it's vitally important to the game. Talk about how you even came into that position.
Yeah, so Tim Johnson, who was a roommate of DJ's when they were freshmen and throughout his career at Penn State, and I played Little League football together. And we were both on the traveling football team. And one of the things they did in the All-Stars on our traveling team, they wanted to find somebody who could deep snap. And I could throw a football really well. If you can throw it really well, you have a great chance of snapping well. And so I got the job because I did it well. A lot of the guys didn't try because they didn't want to do it. It's the least favorite job on the field to do. It's a grunt job and has no thrills to it. But man, if you mess up, it's not a good scene. And so I had that in my repertoire, but I played linebacker and tight end in high school. I went to Penn State playing a strong safety. What's that? This
is the beauty of No Filter Network. We lost your audio for some reason. You just cut out.
Can't miss that part.
Maybe it's the.
Can you hear me?
Nope,
how about now?
I can hear you.
So why don't we do this? I'm thinking, is it on my side? Hold on one second.
Plug from it or something. You got that fancy audio equipment there.
Yeah.
We still can't hear you. Oh, now he's like paused all together. He's paused. Oh no, he's not. Nope.
Connected to the. Is it Bluetooth there?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we got some people in the audience that say they can hear you and us, but clearly we can't hear you. It's something on our side.
We didn't touch it.
Hey, at least we know people are on out there listening. That's a good thing. Maybe we should try to bounce out and bounce back in, or will it? It'll redo the thing, right?
Can you check the settings on
Everybody, this is Haley. She's usually behind the scenes. Come on, come on, come on.
there?
Come on.
See.
This is awesome. This is the first time this has ever happened. That's the beauty of live TV, right?
All right, Greg, can you talk?
We can't even see him now, right?
Greg, can you talk now?
Nope.
Nope.
I know I should have taken that.
How about now? Can you guys hear me?
Oh,
There we go.
was that someone our side?
It looks like our speaker switched to your
Okay.
microphone.
Oh, is my microphone on?
Now we lost
No.
somebody jumped out all the
Now I'm back on. Here we go. I've got camera. Let me.
Not it.
Wait, hold on. So
All
did
right.
DJ break it?
Always breaking stuff.
Oh, that's the beauty of this platform.
How are we doing? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you fine now.
Okay. So, what was the last thing you heard?
You're talking about being obviously a long snapper and how, you got to make it, if you don't succeed, everyone knows, but at the end of the day.
Yeah, it was something that was, it's as DJ will say with athletes, the more you can do, the more your stock goes up. In this case, I was able to do it. I was redshirted my freshman year at Penn State because we already had a season and a fifth-year senior at Penn State at the time that was playing with DJ, Mike Stillman, and then I came in as a redshirt freshman after my first year and started and got to play in 2 national championships. And it was, I'm glad I did because I was going to quit after my first year. And we can talk about that later, but the really cool thing was when I graduated from Penn State, I wasn't thinking about anything post-college playing sports. I got into the hotel restaurant business. I grew up in the restaurant business and was really good at it for 5 years and we're not going to be able to cover every detail, but was able to become the oldest rookie in NFL history in 1994 after being out of football for 5 years. So it was a skill set that was definitely worth doing, even when everybody didn't want to do it when they were a little kid. I'm glad I did it.
So I already have a couple questions because I know your story from DJ, obviously. Well, first of all, I've heard a lot of DJ stories about the national championship game. Tell us some of your favorite memory or just some of your memories leading up to the game itself. Just curious about that year.
Well, for me coming in the year that I did, my freshman class, there were a handful of guys that graduated from Penn State. Majority of them dropped off the radar. It was a perfect storm. We had a lot of arrogant freshman class coming in who thought they were more than that in a bag of chips, and then we had a bunch of arrogant fifth year and older guys that did not bring us in like young brothers. And we had the worst year ever, I think, in Penn State history. And then the next year, DJ's class and the class ahead of them came together and they welcomed the freshmen in like they were brothers. And we got to play for the national championship. And I got to watch this. We're all leaders in some form or fashion. And I love stepping back and watching how everything plays out, why things are successful, why they're not. And I got to witness those group of guys, those 2 years come together, and they were so dead set on winning there was no question in my mind. I actually had lunch with a huge fan of Penn State down in Sarasota before I returned for our 1985 season. And I told him before the lunch was over, I said, I guarantee you this, we'll be playing for the national championship this year.
Yeah, it's amazing that aligns so much to your stories and things that you've said about how focused you guys were on. There was no question you were going to win it. So not just getting to the game like you did the year before, but winning the game.
But there's many components to it. We can't get into all of them, but how you treat your underclassmen coming in is everything.
Okay.
Yeah, and that was a team too that a group at least that went through some fire.
Yeah.
Right. We didn't just walk in and all of a sudden we were winning. I mean, we went through a couple of tough starts and tough season, or at least one tough season, before we realized, okay, we've got to raise the bar here. Here's how we're going to do it. And that's how that team came together.
Right.
And really, to this day, some of the coaches say one of the closest teams they've ever coached. And I think a lot of it is because we did go through, those valleys all together, and of course went to the mountaintop all together as well. So, but going back to Greg, I mean, this guy is, when you say a long snapper, you don't always think about athlete, right?
Right.
You think about a kicker, a long snapper. I mean, these guys are like, yeah, whatever. They're not athletes, but this guy's an athlete. So, Greg, can you talk about what you did after we graduated? What sport you played actually at Penn State?
Yeah, I mean, and you were between the NFL and college for 5 years, you said? I mean, that's like the Kurt Warner bag and grocery story. DJ told me you drove a limo. I mean, give us all of it. Like, what? Like, how did all that happen?
Yeah, well, I was in hotel restaurant management. I went through the Marriott training program in Miami, Florida, at the airport Marriott.
Okay.
2 of the best years of my life. Met people from all over the world. I got to have dinner with a captain from, if you remember, British Airways, or Pan America. Dick Finnegar, I'll never forget him. He had 2 jobs. He was a captain of a 747, and he was the originator of the first employee-owned logging company in Spokane, Washington. And I would sit and listen to him. Just a mentor to me. So the amount of people that God put in my life to mentor me have been amazing and very, very meaningful. So I just worked hard. My parents were the greatest witness to me of work ethic, how to treat people, and just words of encouragement all along the way. 1 or 2 words of encouragement always propelled me forward to help me to get to enjoy a journey that God had predestined for me a long time ago.
But Greg, you had 2 or 3 jobs. Okay, even before the jobs, I have to just say it because you didn't say it. He actually played baseball at Penn State too.
Okay. What position in baseball?
I was an outfielder. I didn't play until high school. And then one year when DJ had graduated and left, I gave up my scholarship to play football and made the baseball team, and quickly lost my position on the team when I wasn't willing to clean the football stadium after the home football games. I said, I'm not doing that.
I'm not doing that.
You're not playing baseball. I said, that's correct. I guess I'm not playing baseball. I made the right choice.
So, Greg, talk about, because it's a fascinating story, one of my best, not just because of our relationship, but it's so inspirational, right? Because we had Steve Springer on a few months ago, and of course we know he's the Rudy of baseball. And Mike mentioned, Kurt Warner. So we think you're the Kurt Warner of football, right? Especially from a long snapping standpoint. Can you talk about the details of your story post Penn State?
Yeah, so I had 5 jobs. What happened was when I had 2 years with Marriott and training, I went on a journey. My dad always said something to me that rang in my ears. Can you hear me? Do you have my microphone? I can hear you. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we got you. You're kind of cutting in now a little bit, but we got you back.
Okay. So I had 5 jobs. I left Miami and went to Knoxville, Tennessee for about almost 2 years. And I had acquired 5 jobs. I had 5 jobs I was working at one time. And one was I was training athletes at a 5-star fitness center. And one of the kids was going on a full ride scholarship to NC State as a quarterback / punter. And Craig Colquitt, who punted for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Chuck Ramsey, who punted for the Jets, they lived in Knoxville, and they were coming out to the high school football field to give them pointers. And I said, you want me to snap? Because you need to do the whole operation. It's not just punting. And he was excited. He said, yeah, would you? And I said, sure. So in the midst of doing that, those guys looked at me with this look of annoyance. And I said, am I snapping too many balls too fast? You want to teach them in between? What's the matter? They go, no, you're fine. I said, well, why are you looking at me that way? And they said, we've never seen anybody snap like you in the NFL. And my first question to Chuck Ramsey was there a guy my size? And I had been working out all along and training with these guys. And I could bench over 420 at that time. So I was at my strongest, and I hadn't even practiced snapping. That was the first time I snapped since I snapped in college. And they were impressed with me with no practice. So when he said, yeah, we had a guy in our camp, when we had a guy in our camp, he said, we had a guy your size in our camp, which more of a fullback. And that just immediately, I just knew I was supposed to call one of our best friends, Tim Johnson, who was playing with the Washington Redskins, to send him a video and ask him to give it to the special teams coach, Wayne Sevier. 7 months later, I get a call from Tim, and he's talking to me for about over 5 minutes. And we're just small talking. He says, oh, by the way, you have a tryout with the Redskins in the spring. And I said, oh, by the way, why didn't you say that at the beginning of the conversation and skip all the small talk? I apologize. We have a lot of ambulance going around today for some reason. But long story short, that was the beginning of the journey. It took 2 years, guys, to achieve that goal. And not once did I ever question and say, I need to quit. There was not one time. It was a journey of faith for me at that time that even my dad set me down after the first year, because I had 2 really good tryouts. And again, I can't get into the detail because we have so many things to cover. But I had a great tryout with the Redskins. They were so impressed with me, they wanted me to come back a second day. And there's a ton of stories within that whole thing. And then I had a tryout prior to that I set up with the Miami Dolphins, with Dan Marino was there. And O.J. McDuffie was the punt returner wide receiver for Dan Marino. And he saw me snapping, and he told Mike Westhoff, you got to hire this guy on the spot. And all the long snappers were pissed at me. They were all upset. What are you doing here? I said, I'm trying out. They weren't too happy. But it gave me that encouragement. And my dad said to me, hey, you need to get a real job. Your football days are over. And I looked at him and I said, I get that you don't get what I'm doing, and that I would probably say the same thing to you if you were my son. But I said, God gave me faith to do this. I said, I'm not doing this for the next 10 years, but I know I'm going to do it one more year. And if it doesn't pan out, I said, I'll go to what's next. And sure enough, I'm playing in the Sombrero in Tampa for my first preseason game. And my dad, my mom, and friends, family are in the stands. And I make my first NFL tackle. And Jay Schrader, who was the quarterback back in the day for the Redskins and was a backup quarterback for the Bengals at the time, I went over to Jay and popped him on the shoulder pad. I said, Jay, that was my first NFL tackle. He didn't even acknowledge me. There's nobody who came up and said, hey, that was a great hit, great tackle. Nobody gave a high five, nothing. I'm walking off, I go, this is a business. And when I said to when I said to Jay, I said, Jay, that was my first NFL tackle. He hit me on my shoulder pad and said, that's what you get paid to do. Don't get too excited. And I just started laughing. I said, okay, mister, I've been in the NFL for 13 years. But one thing I'll follow up with
so you had such a long career in the NFL. Obviously, most of those years were with the Bengals.
They were all with the Bengals, yeah. I tore my
All with the
ACL
Bengals.
in 99, and that was the end of my career.
Okay.
So I was there from 94
I mean,
to 99.
And like a favorite kind of NFL story other than that one, which you just told, which was amazing, or a favorite QB that was there when you were there, or, you know, any kind of like favorite NFL stories?
There's too many to count, but I'll share one with you that was hilarious. We had, as DJ says, you have kickers on that team. That's why I have a job, right? Otherwise, they could just place the ball, just let offense and defense. But because we have special teams, we had a kicker from Kentucky, Doug Pelfrey, who is an excellent kicker and an excellent punter, in Lee Johnson. And Lee doesn't like to hit anybody. He's a punter that will run the other way if he sees anybody coming towards him, okay? And we're playing the Cleveland Browns for my first official NFL game. And Metcalf is the punt returner. And anybody knows Metcalf, he was a Pro Bowl, could bring it to the house often. And on our first punt, they set up a beautiful wall. I'll never forget it. And I could see somebody was coming at me. I was almost one of the first ones down the field. And I'm lasering to him, and I saw this guy out of the side of my eye, and I dove to try to just clip him and couldn't get him. And then he hits the wall. He brought one of our best defensive players to his knees with a juke move. And he takes it to the house. And I'm coming off the field. In my mind, I'm thinking, this is my first game in the NFL, and it's my last game in the NFL. And Doug Pelfrey's on the sideline laughing. I'm going, Doug, this is not a laughing time or a laughing. I'm about to get fired, and you're laughing about somebody scoring on our team. This is not appropriate. He goes, Greg, look at the Jumbotron. So what had happened was, I told you, Lee doesn't like to hit anybody. And I'm watching the replay, and one of the Cleveland Browns hit him so hard it knocked him where his head is now on the ground. His feet are pointing to heaven. And he was flipped upside down. And as I see that, and I look to see where Lee is to see if he's okay, he's yelling at the top of his lungs, is that as hard as you can hit me? Like he's going to do something. And the whole thing was just dramatic and comical at the same time.
Oh my goodness. It's too funny. Well, you, it's funny because we don't really talk about this much on this show, but you reference faith a lot, which I heard kind of as a theme through your story. And believe it or not, we've actually heard that a lot with some of the players that we've interviewed.
You've heard, you said, what have you heard a lot?
Faith, your faith.
Oh, faith, yeah. Yep.
I mean, I heard that at least a couple times, and I know through some of the interviews that's come up a lot. And, you know, we based the premise of the show is based off DJ's book, Decide to Dominate. And you clearly have decided to dominate in your career, both on and off the field. And there's a lot of that through DJ's book as well. So I just kind of wanted to highlight that because that's not something we highlight a lot, but I know it's part of your story, and I think it's cool that you shared that with us today.
Yeah, there's none of this happens without what God had done in my heart and giving. It was a gift. Faith is not some we conjure up. Faith is something that God opens up the door for us, and it's whether we say yes or not. And I said yes. I said yes, Lord.
I love that. Yeah, we just literally before the show today, we were downstairs and we have kind of something we're working on right now. I was like, where is this going to happen? And then literally we get an email like this morning kind of answering that prayer. And I talked to DJ when I came in. I was like, God is definitely there. I mean, look at this email we just got, like answering that prayer. So I got something funny for you guys and news for you that you don't know.
Okay.
So we actually have a lot in common because I used to long snap.
You're kidding me. You are kidding me.
I'm dropping some knowledge.
I did not know that.
So I was a quarterback.
Holy cow.
So I played baseball and football too, and I was a quarterback.
Sure.
And I played only quarterback and growing up all the way through high school. I played college and baseball. And I also, so I wear a hat every show, and I was going to wear my Penn State hat today, but I brought my college hat today because I was also undrafted but did not play in the major leagues. Although I do coach an awesome travel baseball team.
There you,
So I got my Marlin hat today to represent the Wesleyan boys
There you
over
go.
there, right not too far down the road. But yeah, I was a snapper until pretty much my junior year because
wow.
no one could snap. So
That's
I would
crazy.
snap into the punters and obviously the kickers. And then when we got someone who could actually snap, I started doing the holding for the field goals and
Is
the
that
extra
right?
points. But yeah, see, I thought something new.
So how long did you snap actually?
I mean, I snapped from pretty much 7th grade all the way till 11th. So yeah,
Wow.
about 4 or 5 years.
Very cool.
Because I was a QB, and we never did like shotgun when I was growing up. I mean, everything was under center, so it's not like you could hike it to yourself or anything. But yeah, so I was a long snapper for punts and field goals and extra points. So we have a lot in common there.
Absolutely. That's really cool.
So great. I mean, that's interesting because he was holding out on it. He just for the show, I think.
I was, of course, I was. I'm saving that up.
So I want to know how good you were though, because
Well, clearly I wasn't good enough to play in the NFL.
well, I mean, but even in the NFL, I mean, he had something special in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because he did a drill with me one time in the locker room.
Oh Lord, we have to get a football out. Okay, I see where this is
And
going.
because I want to know how good he was. Because everybody would talk about how good he is.
Well, yeah, I mean that story of the NC State guy. I mean that's crazy.
Right.
Like, you hadn't snapped it forever. You go out there and you just start snapping balls like nothing. I mean that's crazy.
Well, I wanted to know how good he was. I said, so Greg, why is everybody talking about how good you are?
Okay.
I mean, you snapped the ball.
Right.
So I said that, and he said, okay, here's what you need to do. Stand over there.
Oh boy, is this an
He
apple
goes,
on the head
just
story?
he goes, no, he goes, put your hand wherever you want it.
Okay.
So I did. I put it here. He
Right there.
snapped it there. I put it over here. He snapped it there. I put it up. I said, holy cow. How the heck did you learn to do that? So that's my question. How did you learn to do that? And how many people did you teach to do it that way?
So you remember J.T. White. J.T. White was a 2-time national champion. He was a center in Ohio State under Paul Brown. And I forget who the head coach was for Michigan, but he went to war and he won a national championship with Ohio State and one with Michigan. I don't know if anybody's ever done that. And JT became one of the coaching staff for Penn State with Joe Paterno. And JT, when I came in as a freshman, gave me a tip of using the nose as your sights. And so where you favor it on the nose will determine whether it's going to favor right or favor left. And so that became a staple. So that one little small tip was huge help, and something that I always mentored and coached other aspiring snappers to do. So your nose is the sight, and what you favor it on will determine if you're on the left side of your nose, it's going to go to the right. If it's on the right, it's going to go to the left.
Okay, I'm gonna have to break out a football later when I get home in the front yard with my son and try that. I love it. So I kind of wanted to switch gears a little bit and start talking about some of the business side. I always like asking this question to every guest we have. What are some of the main kind of principles or core disciplines that, as an athlete, you've taken over to now be in the office, if you will, or as in the business world? I'm just kind of curious.
Willing to do the work. Willing to do the dirty work, get dirty, do the stuff that nobody wants to do. Deep snapping's one of those things, right? My dad put me on a milk crate when I was a little kid in our restaurant, and it was a huge, kitchen sink. There were 3, and in one were all these large Gulf shrimp, and I was put on top of a milk crate. And the kitchen manager's wife said, okay, start peeling those and put them in this colander in this other sink. And man, I felt like I was raking leaves. I learned at a young age where the difference of endurance. I think the greatest thing at Penn State that I learned that I carried forward that was so helpful for me, and we all did it together, man, you had to work hard. Here was one of the most grueling tests that DJ, I'm sure, has told you. Has DJ told you about the 800 at Penn State?
I don't think we talked about that.
No.
Well, in order to move forward, and it's your rite of passage, you don't have to do it as a freshman. They don't do it to the freshmen. They do it to the incoming upperclassmen. And you have to do two, not one, but two 800s within a certain time with your position. And you get a 2.5 minute rest in between. And that second one, the first one's a bear, but that second one, that's a gut check.
It's ugly.
And there's a guy,
It's
there's a
ugly.
guy,
There.
and there, I don't know about DJ, but I knew we had one guy in our class, and it wasn't because he didn't work out or he didn't train hard. There was one guy to this day still can't do it.
It's amazing how much that mental aspect is a part of that. We had something similar in college baseball called bear trips. We had to run around the outside of the field, and then you got this. It was there were 115s, and it was something similar in it. And it was, you know, even some of the guys that were like strong enough, fast enough to do it. It's the up here part that counts. Getting into those later ones, you know. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
you don't
and-
have to be. Go ahead, DJ. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just going to say, you know, the mental part of athletics and then the mental part of business. I mean, is there a correlation, or I know there's a correlation, but from your perspective, what is the correlation of that hard work of you know, pushing through that counts over on the business side?
Well, it all comes down to your goal, right? What are we doing? Why are we here? And there's three things that really are my core that I pass on to kids, because I've mentored kids throughout my whole life. And every time I say it, and it's not because I made it up, it ties in with what God has called us to do, right? And the three things that I tell them, I said, the first thing I tell them, God created you more than, not less than. You're more than, right? Second thing is be the hardest worker in the room. Whatever room you're in, if you're in the classroom, be the hardest worker, right? If you're in the weight room, be the hardest worker. Be the hardest worker, right? And then the third thing, be the kindest person in the room, which requires an amazing amount of humility, and realize that all these things that you're doing is not for your glory. As you get older, the purpose and the goal is to glorify God always. And when I go into business, I want to glorify his name. I want people to say, I can count on that person. You know, there's nothing more important than the greatest compliment you can get is when you hear somebody say, that's a genuine, authentic person that I can trust. Can count on them every time. That's the goal.
That's awesome. So yeah,
I love
no.
all of that.
And you know, it's interesting, Greg. So you grew up in the restaurant business because your parents owned a restaurant. I'm curious. I mean, there's a lot we learn in the restaurant or learn from the restaurant business, but you're not in the restaurant business today. Tell us what you're doing, and then why you're not necessarily in the restaurant in that business.
The restaurant business, it's sort of like I'm the middle child of three, right? So I had somebody to watch that I said, okay, I'm watching you the whole time and I'm learning from you. And I watched my dad. I didn't see my dad for 7 years. He came to our sporting events. He was always, we knew he loved us and supported us, but we didn't have a meal together for 7 years.
Wow.
He was always at the restaurant. And I listened to him all the time because DJ knows my dad. They had a very, very close relationship. And I listened to him. I valued and respected him, and I knew he knew what he was talking about. He'd been around the block. And the restaurant business, people don't realize, is one of the toughest businesses in the world. And the margins are tight. And that's why I love supporting our local restaurants here in Sarasota, Florida, because they're struggling. More so now, what had happened during COVID was demonstrative to our workforce. You got people not wanting to go into work. They want to stay at home. We got to step up our game, and we need to get the word out that we need to, you know, yes, we're watching with inflation right now, our pennies and dollars, but we have to support our local people or they're going to close up.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I've been in the restaurant business for 20 plus years, so I definitely can appreciate all of that.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm not in the restaurant business is because of the mindset. Can I take a group of people and make it successful? Yes, I can. I don't have any doubt of that. But what happens, as you know, in the restaurant business, there's a lot of attrition. and retraining, and your margins are tight. So if you're spending all your money on training people and you're not getting any return on your investment,
Right.
you're not going to be in business long.
Yeah, and you're in real estate now, right?
I am.
Okay. All right, how's that going? You enjoying it? It's been a nice little ride for the last few years. Obviously, you mentioned inflation and things like that.
I've been in multiple industries, and I can say I love it, just like I loved the restaurant business. But I could write a lot of books, man, and
I just said that to you this morning. I work in real estate too, and I literally said that this morning, DJ. I'm like, you write a book. Seriously, you write a book.
yeah, you find out a lot about people under stress.
Exactly.
Normally when we're around people, for 10, 15 minutes, that's easy, right? You go, oh, they were so nice. Yeah. Let's do the stress test.
And then maintaining that third pillar you talked about of being kind in every situation, trying to give people the benefit of the doubt and do the best you can, but at the same time,
That's
not getting taken advantage of. So there's like a happy medium there.
There is.
Sure.
And a lot of times it's a great opportunity to show you don't have to be uptight or stressed. And if you keep your cool, if you can do that, a lot of times they'll jump on board. But if you get crazy, everything's going to go crazy.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, Greg, you mentioned your dad, and of course, I loved your dad, Dave, and actually had a quote from him in a book, or at least a philosophy, and I've never forgot it, because when he said it, I mean, it was just so profound. And I was in college. We were all walked up at the time, and I just never forgot it. And Greg, I don't know if you remember, but he talked about, before you launch out into your own business and spend your money, time, and mistakes, you should work for someone else and spend their money, right, and make mistakes on their money and their dime, and then launch your business.
Correct.
So how did he? I mean, I know you mentioned that during that 7 years he was off and running that restaurant and not there as much, but I'm sure there's a ton of lessons that you learned from him. Just again, a great guy. I got to say that on air. I mean, incredible. I mean, Dave was just amazing. But what are some of the other lessons you learned from?
So there's three stories. I'll tell you 3 quick stories about my dad that were a huge part of my life that will be a blessing to anybody who's listening. I'll never forget how fair he was when they bought the restaurant. The restaurant they bought, he and my mom's parents and my mom, they were failing. They only had 14 employees, and they paid $100,000 more, which in equivalent was $1 million more than they had to for the property and the business. And my dad and my grandfather said this to the accountant who was telling him, hey, we can get this for a song. Let's offer him this lowball price. And my grandfather grew up in the Depression. He said, listen, I did my research and the true market value is X. And he says, I want you to know something. You never kick a man when he's down. So the character aspect of these guys and my mom and my mom's mom was incredible. Every employee, Mike, got a hot meal before their shift for free. And I remember as an 8-year-old, I was sitting there and one of the employees started to complain about the beautiful gift that my mom and dad and my mom's parents gave to every employee. And he was complaining. And my dad didn't yell at him, but I looked at him to see what his response was. My dad was very quick, and DJ will attest to this. He always had a very good response when there was nonsense in the air, just to help the person. But he mentored them. And he looked at the guy, he said, I'm sorry you're disappointed. He said, but I'll be sure to let everybody know that you brought it to my attention you weren't happy with the meal, and that's why I decided not to serve the meal to the staff anymore at the next staff meeting. Oh, no, Mr. Truitt. Oh, no. Don't. It's just fine, right? So my dad was in the Marine Corps, after Penn State, and he was an officer captain, and he unfortunately drank the water there with Camp Lejeune, and he was fighting the last 3 years of his life, going to Duke Hospital, different doctors, getting chemo, and one of the things that impressed the heck out of me, here's a guy that could be feeling sorry for himself. You know what he was doing in his spare time in between his chemotherapies, Mike? He was delivering meals on wheels.
Wow.
That's who he was.
Yeah. Oh, it's amazing.
Incredible.
Sounds like an amazing man. I wish I could have met him.
Yeah, no, he was. He was, you know, I could hear his laugh a mile away. You know, and before he passed, he laughed, and it brought some serious joy to my life. Just that hearing that laugh was, but he was an incredible guy.
Yeah.
No doubt.
Thank you for asking about my dad. I love talking about him.
Man, we've learned so many valuable lessons today. I mean, I know we're kind of running out of time. Do you want to cover a couple other things, or?
Well,
I feel like we need to get you back on again. This has been great. I know I keep saying, I feel like I say every episode, but like it just keeps getting better and better. I mean, no pressure, but like I said in the green room, we had like 24,000 views on Caffeine TV. By the way, we didn't even drop the Dunkin'. There it is. Look, we both we're Dunkin' in that cup, Dunkin' in mine. He's got Dunkin' in the fighter cup. I love it. Looking for sponsorships if anybody's interested.
Absolutely.
But I mean, this is a great show. I mean, this is cool for me to speak to you. You had such an amazing career. You played with DJ at Penn State. You guys, we didn't get to it, but you roomed the night before the national championship game, right? You were roommates the night before the game.
Yeah.
You obviously were on that same team. The amazing story of the break between the NFL and college and all these wonderful business things you're doing. And I know you're giving back a lot to the community, which we didn't get into too much, but I don't know.
Well, plus his number one, his dad, of course, played at Penn State. He was a great athlete. He ran track too.
Right, okay.
But I say that because his brother also played football in college at Dartmouth.
Okay.
And he was a great receiver there.
Really a good student.
Oh, and baseball.
Probably a good student too, Dartmouth.
Right.
That's a pretty decent school.
Right. So, great family, very athletic.
So, Mike, you got to tell DJ we got to get back on when we're over 100,000.
Okay.
People watch. We're over 100. We've got to tell the Dartmouth story with Tim Johnson and me coming to my brother's last year when he was going to graduate. There's many more stories to share. And again, these stories are the most amazing opportunities that God had gave us and given to us to not only experience, but to pass on, to show his amazing love, his mercy and grace, and how limitless God is. It never stops.
I love everything about that. And obviously that was a tie that binds and kind of a theme through today's message. And I agree. I mean, another reason I really like this show is I feel like we're leaving we're leaving like a trail of like some pretty successful stories of folks, not only in the sports world, but in the business world as well. And I mean, I have a 12 and 13-year-old, and I was just thinking about it when you were talking, like, I hope one day they like look back at these and watch them and can like learn some knowledge from all the amazing stories that we're getting from our guests. I also got to say, you by far have the best background of any guest we've had. TJ Graham's was pretty cool.
That's true.
And Eric Burns had a good one, but I mean, that is pretty legit.
Yes.
We're in cold Virginia right now, and that's really nice.
Love it.
We need people coming down to Florida.
I think we need to do an in-person one on the next one. We'll have to go down and make a trip.
We got a great spot for you.
Cool. Well, thanks for being on the show today with us on Decide to Dominate. We really appreciate your time, and looking forward to connecting soon and keep talking about football and all the things.
Sounds great. Thanks for your time, guys.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you. Have a good day.
Take care.